So that's the first part out the way. Hopefully that information will help us better frame what I'm going to be talking about next. Physical distancing, hand washing, hygiene are all important measures for potentially reducing contact with the virus. But what about our host resistance? What about our general resilience to ill health? And so I'm going to be talking about sleep, sun exposure, nutrition, exercise, and psychological stress, as well as toxic exposure, and the impacts that these lifestyle factors have on immune function, as well as health in general. So please keep in mind that I'm going to be focusing primarily on prevention here. There are very few studies, if any, looking at the effects of these things directly on SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. Does this mean that these things are not worth talking about? Well, in my opinion, we can still talk about them, their general effect on immune health, their effect on those perhaps underlying mechanisms like the chronic low-grade inflammation, the metabolic syndrome, and also to draw broad conclusions about immune health. So we need to be a little bit careful about superimposing one immune one disease, one virus onto another virus, and so I'll be cognizant of that. But we also shouldn't be ignoring perhaps the broadly positive effects that these things have on our health. So with that premise, let's get going. So let's start with sleep. So we all know that when we wake up after a bad night's sleep, we feel pretty rubbish. And this is most probably reflected in our biochemistry too. Sleep has a profound effect on health and disease and the capacity to maintain homeostasis, not only directly on helping the immune system fight viruses, but also indirectly on some of those comorbid diseases. So it has a profound effect on chronic disease, on things like blood sugar regulation, blood pressure regulation. Chronic sleep has been well studied in this regard. And so one thing I want to transmit is that sleep is not just this passive state. It's not just lost time. The body is actively repairing and regenerating and clearing out old wastes and doing general housekeeping, preparing for the next day. And it also has a wealth of really interesting neurological effects. It's the time when we are consolidating memories, when we are sorting through what we want to keep and what we want to throw away. And so for neurological health, this is also really important. Adequate sleep duration can improve infection outcomes and is associated with reduced infectious disease risk. And the next study showed that less than 5 hours sleep saw a 350% increase in common cold susceptibility. Now, obviously, the common cold virus is different from the SARS-CoV-2 virus, so we want to take this with a pinch of salt. But I really wanted to add this because the researchers saw this incredible effect with just 5 hours sleep. And so how many people do we know that get less than 5 hours sleep regularly? It's not that uncommon. I used to get not enough sleep on a regular basis before I tried to really make it a priority. And so it has a wealth of other interesting effects on the immune system. It seems to optimize T-cell response, and that study was kind of interesting too, looking at the effect on beta-2 integrin. So what are the mechanisms by which sleep can do all of these amazing things? One may be that it increases our melatonin production, as long as we're sleeping in the dark, obviously. There is a huge difference in melatonin production as we age. Some studies have seen more than 10 times the melatonin in young kids or young adults compared to elderly individuals. And so why is melatonin so important? Well, melatonin has been shown to be a really important antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. It's been demonstrated in research to have a strong anti-cancer effect. There's some quite famous breast cancer research on melatonin, and also a really positive effect on bone health. It has a really important effect on our metabolism, on the way in which we can handle and metabolize sugars. And also a really important effect on the immune system. No surprises there. So it seems to buffer the immune system. And what I mean by that is it seems to increase certain parts of the immune system and calm down certain other parts. So it has a kind of modulatory role. So most studies reviewed showed an increase in natural killer cell number and activity with an increase in melatonin. And it seemed to reduce the Th17 response. It seems to be a key regulator of that NLRP3 inflammasome, and it also seems to inhibit NF-kappa beta production. So conversely, NF-kappa beta also inhibits melatonin production. So what is NF-kappa beta? NF-kappa beta is a nuclear factor, and it triggers the release of many different pro-inflammatory cytokines. It's linked with many of the lifestyle factors that we're talking about at the moment, and so ideally we want this to be by default low. Melatonin may also modulate the RAS system and reduce our blood pressure by reducing angiotensin II. It may also increase nitric oxide and potentially ACE2 expression, and it may also alleviate immunosenescence. So the positive effects on an aging immune system have been pretty well studied, and melatonin seems to play a key role here. So if we want to age well, if we want our immune system to maintain at a high level, then making sleep a priority, and especially sleep in a dark room, is really important. But one thing here is that the lack of melatonin is usually linked to the lack of darkness in our sleeping space, but it can also be linked to perhaps pineal gland malfunction, especially as we get older. And so sometimes it's worth testing our levels with this. So what about sleep's effect on normalizing hormones? So this is another key area where sleep may really be beneficial for us. Sleep deprivation and sleep disorders are associated with maladaptive changes in the HPA axis, leading to neuroendocrine dysregulation. So basically, when we don't sleep enough, we develop a dysfunctional relationship with our stress hormones. And this is one of the main reasons probably why sleep is associated with blood sugar control, because when we don't sleep enough, we gradually lose the ability to control our blood sugar. And so this of course has knock-on effects on all our other hormonal systems, the thyroid hormones, the sex hormones, and of course on our cytokine production as well. So in summary then, what can we say about sleep? We live in an electrified world. We have social media, we have TV, electricity, lights. We can stay awake all night if we want to, working. And all of those factors make getting enough sleep a bit of a challenge. And especially at the moment with all of the news and the statistics about the coronavirus, it's very, very easy to sacrifice on our sleep. So one thing that I've found useful is setting an evening alarm, after which I just turn everything off. I try to turn off the Wi-Fi, the computer, social media, and I try to do something more relaxing like meditation or reading. And if possible, I try to dim the lights or get some blue blocking glasses on. It's not always possible. I'm by nature a night owl, and so it's a challenge for me, but I know that if I do manage to do that and I do manage to get to bed early, then I'm much happier and brighter the next day. So another great thing to aim for here is to turn off as many devices as possible. Turn off the Wi-Fi when we go to bed. If we can, put our phone into flight mode. If we can't, maybe leave it on the other side of the room. And also watch out for any other sources of electromagnetic fields. So like cables running under the bed, or extension cords, or transformers plugged in near to your head. All of these things will raise the amount of electromagnetic radiation that we are sleeping in. And there's obviously a lot of debate about the effects that these things have on health. It's confirmed for sure that they interact with the calcium channels on our cells, and this may very well stop us from getting into that deep restorative sleep at the very least. So another thing to avoid would be stimulants later in the day. Some people are more sensitive than others to things like coffee, but most probably for anybody, having coffee at dinner time is going to potentially stop us getting into that deep restorative sleep. Then getting enough sunshine and vitamin D. This is really essential for the quality of our sleep. And if you're interested in this, I highly recommend going and looking up Dr. Stasha Gominak and some of the things that she has to say about this. Really, really interesting stuff. And then I've put using herbs appropriately. And what I mean by that is what should always come first is proper sleep hygiene. And then if we want to use herbs perhaps to aid our sleep, then this may be a good thing to do, but we shouldn't be substituting good sleep hygiene with herbs or pharmaceuticals if we can help it. Then exercise. Exercise is really great for sleep. Not only does it have an overall anti-inflammatory effect, but it also gets rid of some of those stress hormones that may have built up during the day. So all sorts of different reasons why exercise helps us get into that deep sleep at night.